3 hours into the game, you are fighting for your life. You have repeated the position. 50 moves without a capture. You think you can claim a draw. But do you know for sure? Do you know how? Or this, you spot a brilliant move. Castle and attack with rook at the same time. Except your rook is under attack. Is that even legal? In the next 10 minutes, the rules that decide games and that nobody teaches you. You know castling, right? The only move in chess where two pieces move at the same time, king and rook. How it works? King moves 2 squares towards the rook and the rook hops immediately to the other side. This was kingside castling. Of course, queenside castling works pretty much the same. King moves 2 moves towards the rook and rook hops to the other side. Now, I hear you ask, how can anyone get that wrong? Well, there are still a few cases where castling is not allowed, and it's quite useful to know them precisely. The simplest restriction first. The king and the rook can't jump over pieces. There cannot be any piece between the king and the rook. Any piece, either color. The path must be completely clear. This is the only purely physical restriction on castling. Everything else is about history or safety. If there is a piece in the way, you cannot castle. Full stop. Clear the path first, then castle. Neither the king nor that specific rook can have moved at any point earlier in the game. Not recently, at any point. Once the king moves, the right to castle is gone for that side. The moment either rook moved, the right to castle with that rook is lost. It does not matter if they came back to their original squares. The history is invisible on the board, but it is not invisible to the rules. If this is helping you find your feet in over the board chess, subscribe. New video every week. 3 safety restrictions are all about the king's journey. The king cannot be in check when you castle. The king cannot pass through a square that is under attack. And the king cannot land on a square that is under attack. Start, middle, finish. All 3 must be safe. One thing that does not matter, whether the king was in check earlier in the game. Being in check at some point does not take away your castling rights. Only being in check right now does. Here is the part that even strong players get wrong. The rook can be under attack when you castle. That is completely legal. The rook can pass through an attacked square, also legal. None of the king's safety rules apply to the rook. Only the king's path is protected. When you are deciding whether you can castle, ignore the rook entirely. Ask only, is the king's path clear and safe? That is the whole question. There are 5 standard ways a chess game ends in a draw. Mutual agreement, stalemate, threefold repetition, the 50-move rule, insufficient material. Most club players know the first 2 clearly and the last 3 vaguely. After 10 years of chess, I shamelessly admit that I am one of them, so this video helps me too. These cases come up in real games and catch people out. The simplest draw. Both players agree the position is drawn, or that neither wants to play on. One player offers, the other accepts. Under FIDE rules, the offer must be made after moving and before pressing the clock. Once made, it cannot be withdrawn. The opponent can accept, decline, or simply keep playing. No obligation either way. One thing worth knowing for tournament play. Some events prohibit draw offers before a specified number of moves. Always check the regulations, and offering draws repeatedly can be penalized by the arbiter. Stalemate is when player on the move has no legal moves left and they are not in check. Like in here, white cannot move anywhere legally when on the move. It's a stalemate, it's a draw. Another example. White in here is in check, but they can save the game. They simply move into the corner and now black king either steps away from the pawn or moves to h3. White has no legal moves left. It is a stalemate. Third example, maybe slightly more difficult. White is obviously in pretty bad shape here, but they can still save the game. How? They simply take the bishop and there is nothing left for black but to retake the white rook. Whatever else they did, they also can't help it. So it is a stalemate again because white has no more legal moves left. It is a draw. If the same position appears 3 times with the same player to move and the same castling rights, either player can claim a draw. It does not need to be 3 times in a row. The positions can be spread across the whole game. How to claim it? Write your intended move on the score sheet, then call the arbiter and say you intend to make a move that will create the 3rd repetition before you make it. Or if the position has just appeared for the 3rd time and it is now your move, you can claim immediately. Important, if you touch a piece before claiming, you lose the right to claim on that move. One more thing, if the position repeats 5 times, the arbiter declares the draw automatically. No claim needed. If 50 moves per player pass with no pawn move and no capture, the player to move can claim a draw. The count resets the moment any pawn moves or any piece is captured. It is not automatic at 50, you must claim it. The procedure is the same as 3-fold repetition. Stop the clock, call the arbiter, write your intended move. If nobody claims and the count reaches 75, the arbiter declares the draw without any claim. In practice, most games never get close, but in certain endgames, one side trying to mate with a bishop and a knight, or a rook endgame that has gone on too long, knowing this rule can save you the game. Under FIDE rules, the game is drawn the moment a position arises in which neither player can checkmate the opponent by any possible sequence of legal moves. This is called a dead position. The standard cases: king against king, king and bishop against king, king and knight against king. In all of these, checkmate is impossible. Not just unlikely, but impossible by any sequence of moves. The game stops the moment this position is reached. No claim needed. But call the arbiter if the other side disagrees. They might not know it. En passant is one of the weirdest rules in chess. Let me explain it to you with 2 examples. The first one, you want to play d4. You want to move your d-pawn by 2 squares. But you didn't give a fair chance to the opponent to take you with their pawn. So they still can with a move called en passant. And they can take it and move to d3 in fact. So it does seem really confusing, but that's the whole point of the en passant move. Give them a fair chance to take you back. Let's see how it looks on the other side. Black now wants to play d5, but they didn't give you a fair chance to take them with your e5 pawn. So you simply take their pawn exactly again with the en passant move. 3 things to know. First, only a pawn can capture en passant, no other piece. Second, it can only be done on the move immediately after the 2-square advance. If you do not take en passant straight away, the right is gone forever. You cannot come back to it a move later. Third, the capturing pawn moves diagonally to the square the enemy pawn passed through, not to the square where the pawn landed. The captured pawn is removed from the square it landed on. That is the move that surprises people most when they see it first. A pawn disappearing from a square that was never touched. Next week, learn chess from scratch in 10 minutes. How the pieces move, how the game works, and how you win. See you at the board.